All right, today is December 11, 2017, Monday. This is the meeting of the CSI implementation group. We're going to kick it off, and looks like Luis has a bunch of things to share. Luis, do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, I can share my screen. Let's see, share my screen. I think it's this one. Okay. All right, can you guys see this okay?
Yep.
All right. So what I'm trying to give you just an update of a few things that I'm working on. The first thing is the documentation is at the same state it was last Friday. I haven't done any updates for it,
Okay.
but the wiki has some information on it. But what I would like to add is that quite a few people came by the booth, the Portworx booth, to talk about CSI, how to write a CSI driver. And what I found out is that by explaining it to them, it made it easier for me to think about how to write the documentation to do that.
Okay.
So I'll be adding some of that to the section called, how to, writing a CSI driver. Second is CSI test, the mock test that we have for containers or applications trying to talk to a CSI driver. I updated it last night. It looks like there was quite a big update in the CSI spec to a bunch of probe functions, which I don't know what they do yet, but I needed to update it. So I updated it. I just generated a new mock gen, and then it's all up there now. It's all merged in with CSI test. Okay. Host path container. One of the things that I noticed while I was writing the E2E test last week with terrible Wi-Fi was that the CSI mock driver will not do what we want because it doesn't actually mount anything. It's just, it's good for, you want to test a few things, but it doesn't do what we want for E2E test. So instead, I used a host path container, and I needed it to be containerized. So I sent a pull request for a Docker setup that I created, and even though it's not merged, I used that setup to create the container that's on the hub right now. Okay. Next is the E2E test. The E2E test, what I've been doing is trying to create a YAML that I can deploy, pretending to be an E2E test. I've been doing everything that E2E would do before I actually write the code, because that would just be a waste of time if I continue changing things. So last night I was able to see the mount request to the driver. So that was cool. And the one biggest problem was that the application, when it went to a node, it was going to a node where the driver and all its friends were not. So the kubelet was trying to communicate through Unix domain stack. There's nobody there, right? So I just had to create like a node selector or a node name to force the application to go to the same node, and everybody's happy. So that's what I'll do with the E2E test. Second thing is that
Can you not, why didn't you just deploy the driver to all the nodes?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to.
Okay, perfect.
So, yeah, exactly. So what I was thinking instead was like I was putting everybody in one bucket, right, and then deploying that. But I think what I should do instead is I'd say there should be a daemon set for the driver.
That's exactly right. Yep. That's what we documented in the design doc initially.
Awesome. The daemon set for the driver, and then a stateful set replica one for the attacher and the provisioner.
Yep.
And then I'll do that, and then it won't matter.
Yep, so, that's exactly it.
Awesome. Okay, so the next things I'm going to talk about are proposals. So those are my current work. The next parts are driver unit test. Driver unit test is something that Jan has been talking about, and so I had the opportunity to talk with Shakri last week, and I have a proposal on that. So let me just go to it. And I created a little POC of this so it works, but this is how it would be done. The usage would be that a driver will create a function for tests, and it will just set up whatever it needs to set up, right? If it has to mark anything or create the environment. But once it's set up, it just calls driver sanity tester. and then just says run, and that's it. That's the usage from the driver developer. It could be possible also to create a program and just give it the endpoint, and it just runs the same test, right? So this is an pseudocode. I ripped out a bunch of unnecessary stuff, but example, the document implementation where we have a new object called a sanity tester, okay? And when you say run, this won't be inside run, of course. It will be like nicely done, but you can see here that what it does is it uses what is that framework? Ginkgo, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, which is the same one as the E2E we use and everybody uses for that stuff. So we would create identity tester, and I use this mainly because it is self-describing. So when a developer just says run, he hasn't implemented, or she hasn't implemented this code, so they wouldn't know where it will fail. But being self-describing will say, look, it failed because I was testing this, right? So, for example, here's an easy one, that when you do a get plugin info with nothing in the object, it should fail because the version hasn't been set up. So you need to have a version. So your driver needs to make sure that the version, its object, is there, right, and things like that. So that's what it would be like. This is my proposal.
This is great. I mean, this is the start of a certification suite for drivers.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's exactly what Shakri and I were talking about. Certification to me is a scary thing, because it's like, how do we know? But at least sanity testing, we can all agree on, right?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I say go ahead, get it merged into Kubernetes CSI. We can use it to sanity check stuff, and then if it becomes viable, then we can donate it back to CSI as an official certification suite. I think there's folks in Cloud Foundry also working on a certification suite, so we can figure that out and maybe merge the projects as needed.
Awesome. And awesome. So let me talk about the last one. The last one is driver patterns. So one of the things I was trying to talk to Shakri and on the Slack was that the current driver pattern is using global variables, so it makes it very hard to test. So I have here another style of driver patterns. Let's see. So here's, let me go to the wiki. Drivers, no, not drivers. So CSI test and driver has a certain pattern that I've been using, which is I have an object that I create, and that object has its following receivers. It has a start, it has an address to return back, and the start of the server has a go line. Here, it actually says go, so start comes back, and in the go, it has a method to tell start that to not continue until the server is up and running. In other words, when you say start, the server has succeeded in starting the gRPC server, and when you come back from start, it's working. So then you have also a stop, which is necessary for testing, because that way you can close the channel and you can start new ones, right? So this is the also we have an ACE running and things like that. But this is just the pattern I would like to see us use in the drivers, because it makes it very simple to write tests for that. Because then in each test you can say, start the thing, stop it, or start it many times in a row and see how it behaves. So stop it many times in a row and things like that. So
that seems like a good idea to me. Chakri, do you have any comments, suggestions on that?
No, actually, that seems good to me too. Let's try. Please, I'll make the drivers also to do this. That will be better, I think. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and it's going to be done in common. So all the drivers, you have a common one, and then everybody can pull it from there. And also this is what I have in lib open storage. This is like the Portworx stuff, the Portworx driver. And I have a server.go, which defines an interface to what it returns. You can see there. And
nice.
That's where
I like that pattern of always starting with an interface and having a concrete implementation, and then that way you can mock out whatever you need to do.
Exactly. So it's in lib open storage, but I can We can talk about that offline, but this is what I wanted to bring up.
All right, sounds good. Looks like you had a very productive weekend. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, guys, I need to go and run to another meeting. Yeah.
I just want to clarify, most of it is already there, right? Just that we need to add the start and stop, right?
It's just that it's also using a global variable. And that
actually, it's not a global variable. It's a singleton, but most of the drivers moved away from singleton right now. They're also getting a new separate driver object.
Yeah, that's a singleton.
That should be okay.
Yeah. We have to be careful in usage of the singleton because sometimes singletons hold information when you go from one test to the next. So that's why creating an object, as you call it.
My point was FlexRupt is the only one which is doing singleton today. NFS moved away, Cinder moved away, iSCSI moved away. I think HostPod might be using singleton.
Okay.
Because they're the first two drivers.
Okay.
So, but I agree with you. Yeah, I moved away everything from singleton just to make it as part of a driver object.
Awesome. Yeah, so the host path was the one I've been looking at mostly.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, I will see you all on Wednesday, and we'll continue talking and chatting on Slack.
Cool. All right. Thanks a lot.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, Luis.
Take care.
Thanks.
All right. So next up, Chakri, have you had a chance to run through your drivers with the latest code changes?
Yeah, I ran that. I tried both NFS and FlexRupt, both of them.
Okay.
So I'm waiting for the deployment files from iSCSI. So I'm talking to Shilpa on that.
Okay.
And we need to have the same deployment files. I think Luis added for host path already. So, and Edison worked on the Cinder driver. So I'm going to ask him to do it too.
Perfect.
Yeah, I want multiple guys to do it rather than me doing it because if there are any suggestions and everything, they'll come out. It will be better.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
That sounds good to me. So yeah, last week Vlad got the teardown changes and related bug fixes in. They've been merged. There was some question about whether they're part of the release branch or not. The way that the release works is right before they lift code freeze, they'll go ahead and do a mass merge. If for some reason that doesn't happen, we'll keep an eye on it and we can poke the release team to make sure it gets cherry picked. And so I don't think there's any other blocking open issues that I'm aware of. Are you guys? Is there anything that we need to keep an eye on?
So a couple of things is, I think I got some feedback from Jan adding unit test.
Okay.
So I'm working on it. So I talked to Luis last week also. He had some mock driver implemented. So which Jan did it for attacher test.
Okay.
So I'm also planning to have similar interface for CSI, the CSI test for even client side.
Okay.
So
and is that going to be a blocking issue at all?
It's not going to be blocking, but it's better to have the unit test, right? So
okay, that makes sense.
Nothing blocking there in the
Unit test for attacher?
That's for not the attacher, that's for the drivers. All the drivers have some base end-to-end complete unit test, so that like a
Okay. Cool. There was something that Luis mentioned in the Slack group, which was the attacker currently assumes that all drivers implement the controller. We should modify the attacher to check capabilities to see if the driver actually implements.
It checks the capabilities,
okay.
And then does dummy attach, right? Marks everything attached. But the thing is that every CSI driver must run its own external attacher.
Right.
And we could share them if they don't implement the attachment at all. That could be.
One more thing, it's not only external attacher, everybody needs to have a dummy controller service. Because when you identify a driver today from the identity, there's no way you know that this guy supports the controller functionality or not.
Yeah.
So that means maybe we need to.
So that means every single driver for our alpha deployment must be deployed with the external attacher, regardless of whether it implements attach or not.
Yes.
So
external attacher and each plugin should implement a controller service, even though it does.
Well, so let's not put the burden on the controller or on the driver. So let's say the driver can implement, to the CSI spec, which means that if they don't support the controller service, they're not forced to implement it. And then what we can do is have the external attacher probe what would be basically just a CSI driver that implements only the node service, and then it's going to do the capabilities, figure out that it doesn't implement it, and then just
there is no capabilities in identity service today.
We should probably move it there from controller service. That makes sense.
Yeah. Capabilities should be in the controller service so you can discover them and figure out whether this is required or not.
They're not there in the identity service, so because of which there is no way for Yarn to figure it out unless he assumes if it doesn't go to require, that means it doesn't support it.
Okay, that means this is something we should take back to the CSI group for fix.
It's controller get, here it is, controller get capabilities.
Yeah.
And this is in controller.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. We're also planning on trying to figure out how to discover capabilities early. Okay, I'll take a note to bring it up in the CSI group.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds good to me. And then Vlad, I think you posted in the group somebody saying that we need to provide like a one-liner or something for the release. Let me see if I can pull up this guy right here. Vlad, I think you're on mute. We cannot hear you at all. Okay, it sounds like your audio is not working today. Do you want to just throw it in the chat or? We'll just take that offline then. Okay, so beyond that, are there any other major issues you're tracking? No. End-to-end tests are still in the works. Documentation is in the works. Any update on the state of the drivers right now?
Yeah, iSCSI is done. Just the deployment is pending. The deployment files are pending. And GCE, yeah, I'm still trying to work on it. I didn't get a chance because I was trying to clean up the other drivers.
Okay.
So, but one thing I want to point it out is the only driver which actually does a provisioning and controller attach and controller detach is seems to be right now is a host path.
It's host path.
So that's the reason I want to finish up the GCE. But yeah, anyway, it's got backlog. So I will try to shoot for it in the next couple of weeks, and maybe next week, and see if we can close that one.
Okay.
So that we have one end-to-end complete real driver. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And host path, according to Luis, was done as well, right?
Yeah, host path should be done. I think. Yeah, it has a PR, so we need to merge it. So
I'm going to go ahead and mark both of these green then.
My audio working now.
There you are. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, my Chromebook. I don't know what happened. Anyway, yeah, I don't remember.
Sorry, go ahead, Vlad.
What was the question?
The question was about the one-line description or something that the release team was asking for. I think you posted in the Slack this thing.
Oh, that was a general ask from the release team.
Oh,
So
okay.
I was just confirming whether or not we have that.
Okay, so let's follow up on that. I'll take a note to follow up on that and make sure we have
Yeah,
something.
it seems like Lewis said if it's for the entry, we have something.
Cool.
But I wasn't entirely sure how I want to approach that. If it's just an entry, we provide a documentation for that.
Okay, sounds good. So end-to-end test documentation and then a couple of volume plugins is pretty much all that we're aware of. There are no blocking issues preventing volumes from working at this point. So I think we're in a decent state.
Awesome.
Is there anything else you guys want to talk about?
Actually, I do. I have a quick question for you, Saad.
Sure.
I'm supposed to kind of summarize volume releases for 1.9 internally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of hard to know whether or not these features will make it into 1.9. So I was asking to confirm from what you know, whether raw blocks, resizing.
Yeah, so from my understanding, raw block made it as alpha.
Okay.
1.9. The changes to the core Kubernetes code base were made.
Okay.
Only one volume plugin made the changes. I forget which one.
Oh, okay.
And so in subsequent releases, it'll be adding in more volume plugins to support that and moving the actual internal implementation to beta and then GA.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, there was work to make the scheduler binding storage aware for local storage. That work also went in. It's all flag gated as alpha as well.
Okay.
And of course, we have CSI.
So that means local storage that depends on that is also working. Okay.
Yeah, well, so local storage is a multi-quarter effort. Local storage got in, was it last quarter or the quarter before that, in some form.
Yeah.
If you look at the list of entry volume plugins, local storage exists.
Right.
It works, but it has some limitations. One of the limitations was that you could have local storage. You could bind because binding for PVC is completely independent of the scheduler. You could bind to somewhere where the local storage is available, but other resources are not. So, for example, memory and CPU, and then your workload won't start. So what this change does this quarter is to make that logic smarter and say, let's take into account storage when we make the decision to do scheduling. And so
that's
it says,
the
okay,
topology aware volume.
Exactly. So that went in, but it's also alpha and flag gated off, so you have to explicitly turn it on.
Okay.
What else is going in?
Let's see. So local storage, the scheduling, resizing. Did that make it?
Resizing also went in last quarter. This quarter, I believe it was adding in more volume plugins that implement the resizing code, including GCE, and then also I think they added in file system resizing.
We'll probably want to go down that Excel spreadsheet, right, and make sure that we capture everything in there. Is this a general statement for 1.9?
That would be great. That would be really great.
So just update that?
Well, Michelle had said something about the docs team asking for a blurb about storage, and I'm not sure what we're talking about here, where Michelle's requests had come from, because I haven't seen them. Nobody's reached out to me asking for anything about 1.9.
Let me check with Michelle and see what that is, and then we can put something together.
Well, Vlad, where did you get the request from?
Oh, no, this is just for internal, so we can keep up with what's coming with 1.9 as far as storage. And I looked at the sheet.
The spreadsheet.
spreadsheet for the features, and it wasn't quite clear what we'll make, because I look at the sheet and actually look at the issues, and some issues did have update that, hey, this is not going to make it, but others didn't.
Okay.
So I was just checking.
Cool. So I think let me go back to that spreadsheet and try to get that updated and see where the release team wants the release notes and put something in for storage, and then Brad can help out with that as well.
Yeah, Michelle mentioned it, but I went through my emails and couldn't find any requests or.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I'm guessing they're just broadcasting in the generic release team groups, so we need to go active to go and find that. So.
Yeah, this is purely internal, so we can keep an eye on what's coming for storage. But it sounds like Michelle had something similar going on as well.
Okay.
That was super helpful. Thank you.
Cool.
I have one more topic to discuss.
Sure.
So at KubeCon, right, the topic came about Go CSI, whether we want to leverage it. So, and I want to hear the thoughts. So I think the only concern I heard was kind of like when we looked at it and asked the question, and Luis decided like, okay, it's a little bit boilerplate, like we can just implement the interface. So and the interface is already good enough at that point of time. So we went ahead, but the only concern I heard was we didn't even give a chance to look into the Go CSI. So
I've talked to Clint and a few people at KubeCon, and the feeling was there's a lot of function and features in Go CSI, maybe too much. And I asked Clint if we could maybe piecemeal out some of the function, and he was going to go and check with directors and come back with me on that.
Okay. So the other concern that came up was where will the Go CSI code will stay? That's another concern, I think. So, yeah. So, Vlad, you want to add anything to that?
I think
I was just waiting for Clint.
Yeah. Okay.
What was that?
I was just waiting for Clint to come back and see what he says about if he can break that package up or not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't have anything else. I think I talked to both you and Chakri at last week, basically stating the same thing.
Yep.
Some of this stuff we'll have to. Clint probably will have to have the last word. So definitely, if he said that, he'll get back to you. I'll check with him too and bring this up so that we can have some definitive outcome with this.
Okay, sounds good to me. So one question I had was, has anyone tested the provisioner end-to-end with a real driver?
That's only the host path.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Anyone tested it provision? Yeah, we've tested it end to end internally with one of our drivers. I'm gonna check with one of the guys who does the end to end to make sure that we didn't have to do, because I know they've pulled out some of those the provisioners and the attachers early on.
Okay.
I want to make sure they're using the latest and not something that they tweak to make it work. But I'll check.
Okay. Cool. So I think we'll get some of this coverage once the end-to-end tests are done, but I want to make sure that we've at least poked at these paths and made sure that there's nothing blocking.
Oh, so I'm sorry. Are you specifically talking about the test suite that Louis is talking about, or just?
No, I was just
Right.
asking in general, has anybody
Oh,
run
okay,
these
yeah.
code paths at all, just to make sure that, we've exercised them before the end-to-end tests come along?
Okay, yeah.
So
In
that's-
general, yes, we've ran all components deployed in a multi-node cluster and tested some of this stuff already.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're looking very good right now. Let's just take it day to day. I have these meetings scheduled until the end of next week before Christmas, and then we can reassess and see what the need is. And if we need to end earlier, we can end them earlier and just take the holidays off. But we can discuss that on Wednesday. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, good job, guys. You guys should be very proud. This thing is huge, and the fact that you got it done in this much time is insane.
It's crazy.
All right. Take care, everyone.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.